Some people think Christianity is opposed to science, and this might be true of some evangelical fundamentalists, but historically, many of the most important scientists were not only devout Christians, but were inspired by their Christian faith to make their scientific discoveries. In fact, there are important scientists from every Christian denomination. Anglicans have had tons of scientists, but one of the most important was Robert Boyle. He's considered the father of modern chemistry, and he said God would not have made the universe as it is unless he intended us to understand it. So for Boyle, doing science was doing God's will. Another famous Anglican scientist was Francis Bacon. He's the father of empiricism, which is what the scientific method is based on. So in some way, all of modern science can be traced back to Francis Bacon. He said that God has written 2 books. One of them is what we're familiar with, which is Scripture, but the other one is creation. So Francis Bacon believed in natural revelation, where doing science was actually studying what God has revealed. Lutherans also have tons of scientists. For example, Leibniz actually invented calculus at the same time that Isaac Newton did. Wait, so he's the reason I have all this calc homework which I'm putting off by watching this video? Forget this, I'm leaving Lutheranism. Time to become Stop! Calculus might be hard, but without it we wouldn't have many of the modern technologies we enjoy today. Leibniz saw calculus as a divine puzzle for him to solve. He said the ultimate reason of things must lie in a necessary substance, which is what we call God. Lutherans also have Kepler, one of the most important astronomers, who discovered how planets move around the sun. Kepler said, "I wanted to become a theologian. For a long time I was unhappy. Now behold, God is praised by my work even in astronomy." This sounds like just a nice little quote, but it reflects the Lutheran doctrine of vocation. According to Lutherans, you don't need to become a priest or a monk to serve God in your work. You can serve God in secular jobs as well. The Roman Catholic Church obviously has tons of scientific heavy hitters, and it would be impossible to cover them all in this video, but first there's Nicholas Copernicus, who discovered that the Earth moves around the sun, not the other way around. And he said that knowing the mighty works of God by studying science is an acceptable form of worship. Galileo defended Copernicus's theory about the Earth and the sun, and some people think the Catholic Church persecuted or even tortured him for this, but that's a myth. Some people think evolution and genetics disproves Christianity, but the father of modern genetics was a Catholic friar, Gregor Mendel, who discovered how genetics work using his pea plants. Some people think the Big Bang disproves Christianity, but the Big Bang was also discovered by a Catholic priest. Before he had discovered this, scientists thought the universe was eternal, but he proved with the Big Bang that the universe had a beginning. That raises the question of how the universe began. There are lots of scientists in the Reformed Calvinist churches, most notably Leeuwenhoek, who's the father of microbiology, which is necessary for modern medicine, and he says we can glorify God even in the microscopic little things. The Swiss Reformed churches also have lots of scientists like von Haller, the father of modern physiology. It seems like the Calvinists really like their medicine. There are also lots of Reformed mathematicians like Leonhard Euler. He pioneered the use of f of x to denote functions, he popularized the number e, and he thought of Euler's identity, which he thought proves God. There was also this Dutch Reformed guy who invented the modern clock, and this makes sense because Calvinists have always been obsessed with time and precision because they believe every second is predestined by God. Presbyterians are the largest Calvinist branch, and they've had a few scientists like Alonzo Church, who's one of the fathers of computer science, and he actually taught Alan Turing, who's also one of the fathers of computer science. Also, Presbyterians are the only denomination to do communion on the moon, because that's what Buzz Aldrin did, and he's an elder at his Presbyterian church. Methodists don't have as many scientists because they developed more recently out of the First Great Awakening, but they do have William Dollinger, a British minister who was the first to study single-celled organisms under a microscope. He was also one of the first supporters of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. He saw no contradiction between evolution and Christianity, just like most Christians during Darwin's time. It wasn't until later fundamentalism that Christians started to reject it. Congregationalists are basically rogue Puritan Calvinists, and they do have quite a few scientists because they literally founded Harvard and Yale. One of them is Edward Hitchcock, who's a Congregationalist minister. He was a geologist, but most importantly, he was dedicated to natural theology, or reconciling Christianity and science. So he discovered some of the first fossils in America. Now, the Eastern churches have never done quite as much science as the Western ones, partially because they focus more on experiencing God than studying God academically, and because they've always been skeptical of natural theology, but they still have a few great scientists scientists, like Mikhail Lomonosov, who's the first to study the atmosphere of Venus, and maybe this is why the only country to ever land a rover on the surface of Venus is Russia. Unfortunately, because it's Venus, the rover melted soon after landing. There's also some Oriental Orthodox scientists, like this Armenian Orthodox guy Viktor Ambartsumian, who's considered the father of Soviet astrophysics, and given that the Soviets were the first to go to space, that is quite an achievement. Last we have the Baptists, and despite what young Sheldon said, there actually are Baptist scientists, most notably George Washington Carver. He was called the Plant Doctor because he was instrumental in the development of crop rotation, and also helped develop peanut butter as well. Something he said was, "I love to think of nature as an unlimited broadcasting station through which God speaks to us every hour, if only we will tune in." So because Christians believe that God made the world, they shouldn't be afraid to study it, and that's what science is all about. So next time someone says Christianity goes against science, remind them of all the great men who have proved otherwise.